you in the truck, you gonna stand up. Rep the Midwest, get it hype, this the ramp up. Hey, the ramp up, never hit the brakes. Break it down day to day, show the people what it takes. The ramp up, the ramp up.
Welcome to the Ramp Up. It's the first edition of a podcast brought to you by Hoplite Logistics. I am your host, Rich Cruel, and my co-host here is Brian Rakowski. We are the two co-founders of Hoplite Logistics. First time doing something like this, so we hope it brings some value. First episode is just going to be a little bit kind of about what this podcast is going to be and what it's not going to be, and then kind of just discuss our journey so far as a startup freight brokerage, and hopefully people can kind of learn from some of our mistakes, and we can kind of keep track of how we progress in real time. First off, what the podcast won't be about is this is not a blueprint on how to get success in this industry whatsoever, because we definitely haven't really accomplished anything yet beyond just taking the plunge. And it's been a fun journey. It's been a crazy one. Excited to talk about it. But, this isn't anything we're saying like do what we did, because everyone's journey is going to be completely different. I don't know if you definitely feel the same way there, Brian, but it's been a fun 11 months. I'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe people can learn from our mistakes and sharing some similar naive situations that we went through too. But yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for people who maybe want to be founders or are founders or have gone through this as well, and to kind of hear our story and side of things and relate, or maybe people that are just interested in what this journey is like, because we both know logistics really well, but starting our own business, it's been a whole other thing.
Yeah, a lot different. We've had a lot of people reach out saying, really cool what you guys are doing, and just want to know a little bit more about it, because a lot of people are on the edge of wanting to do something similar, or maybe just taking that plunge and kind of betting on themselves. And, I think this is kind of cool. There's a lot of podcasts out there with founders. Give a shout out to our guy, Nate Schutz with Bootstrapper's Guide to Logistics. And I think his episodes are really cool because he's talking with different founders and their journeys all the time, and really valuable listen. So give him a look if you haven't. But for us, our journey's still ongoing. And I think that's what's really cool is just to give kind of updates on how we're doing, like the struggles we went through as we did this. And even if you're not in logistics, it's just a startup business and different things that we've encountered that have nothing to do with the industry that we're still figuring out and trying to navigate our way through. So that's kind of what this will be about. It's a look at what it's like to build a company from the ground up while also still doing that actively. We want to provide some value about cross-border Mexico. Brian has been doing that for almost a decade and has a wealth of experience with that. We'll have some people on here, kind of discuss different things of value. So the first episode each month will kind of be about, different processes, different parts of the process of starting this. And this one is just the plunge. What made us do it? How did we come up with the idea? How did we come up with the branding? And then, the next second episode each month will be kind of discussing with someone else outside of Hoplite, kind of about that specific theme. So this first one's a plunge, and then we'll be kind of talking this to end it about our favorite logistics brands, because the story of Hoplite, how we came up with the branding, I think is pretty cool. But there's a lot of companies out there that are doing awesome things with branding and marketing. And it's funny. I think we'll get plenty of love at the end here. But
yeah. So on that note, let's dive in. So first, people that don't know you, who are you?
Yeah, Rich Cruel. So I'm the CEO, co-founder here at Hoplite Logistics. Just my background, I've been in logistics now for 15 years. I started out at a company called Crane Worldwide, fresh out of college. I grew up in Michigan, went to Central Michigan University, fire up. If you're watching the video, you'll see a Go Blue sign behind me. I'm a Walmart Wolverine, grew up in Michigan, Go Blue Michigan family. And so that's a big part of who I am personally. But yeah, after college, after Central, I got hired at Crane in their Los Angeles office. I worked out there for 3 years. I was did imports and exports for them, and then got into outside sales for about a year. moved back to Chicago to start at Coyote Logistics, which will be very well represented on this podcast. Bryan can talk about his background too, but met so many awesome people at my time there. Spent almost a decade there in carrier sales and then leadership before departing during COVID to start at Traffic Tech in Chicago, where I oversaw the carrier sales team, some of the cross-border teams, intermodal drayage. That was a very fun experience too, with a lot of great people. And before we started this journey in 2023. So Bryan, maybe you want to give your background as well.
Sure. Yeah. Bryan Rukowski, COO, co-founder, Hoplite Logistics. I'm from Michigan as well. We have similar backgrounds that we can kind of talk about. Also a Wolverine fan, Lions fan as well. Went to Kalamazoo College. After I graduated, my sister had some friends at Coyote, so moved to Chicago, got a job at Coyote. That was in 2010, and spent a year in carrier sales, next 5 years in customer sales before moving over to the Mexico team and helping them grow out that division. And eventually we crossed paths again when I went over to Traffic Tech, the director of Mexico over there, and then did a brief stint at Bison Transport, asset-based carrier with the brokerage, kind of while we were building the company as well. So yeah, that's kind of my foray into logistics and experience so far. And here we are. So you are the one that actually approached me, for those that don't know. And so I kind of want to talk about what drove you into wanting to do this. Like, why did you, what was the feeling or the thing that kind of like gave you that itch to say like, well, maybe I should just jump out and try this crazy thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a leap of faith. I appreciate you for joining the ride too. I mean, I think anyone who's worked for large companies has at some point in time felt like not hopeless, but kind of a point where like I'm making a difference in certain aspects, but it ultimately like the final decisions are not in my control. So I can only do so much. And you might have ideas of things you want to try out or feel strongly about something, and you can't necessarily get them pushed through. So I want to give credit to, my previous employers. I had a lot of autonomy in a lot of the roles, but ultimately there's nothing like autonomy, like owning your own business. And so that had always been something in the back of my mind that I wanted to explore. And we came up with the idea, I think, with Bryan, you and I working together, and I saw how fast Mexico was growing with the immediate impact you had made when we started together at Traffic Tech, and started thinking like, man, that there's a big opportunity there. They say there's riches and niches, and you got to have something to stand out. So bringing it back to kind of wanting to start our own company, like that seemed like a really good niche to get into. And you and I had been working together for a long time, but we didn't know each other extremely well until we started working together at Traffic Tech. And I just know you're wired similarly to me. And it's been a very good partnership. But when we kind of started talking about doing this, I got excited about it and said, okay, if there was ever a time to do it, now would be the time. Getting a little older, getting a little more gray hairs, and honestly, I had that pull for a long time, but there's no better time than now to start.
What was the scariest part when just thinking about like doing this?
I mean, all the things you don't know. When you go into a well-oiled machine or companies that are established, it's a little bit easier to get going because the structure's in place. But like when we start, it's like, how do you set up payroll? How do you choose a benefits provider, or how do people request PTO in a system? How do you, it's just all these little things you don't think about. And that was a lot. And we took it one step at a time, but
pretty great now. We'll see, how do you get an MC authority, surety bond, your insurance, like all those little steps and things. I remember thinking about that a lot and being like, I have nowhere to start. At least I have someone that wants to do this with me. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I will say I got to give you a lot of credit because when the idea finally took hold and I was like, I really want to do this. If I'm leaving my current position, I don't want to go start at another company where I'm going to do the same thing all over again, where you come in and build relationships, but ultimately you don't have a say in how things really go. And it just sounded maddening to start that process over. So that was kind of the impetus. It was like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's try it. In worst case, I can always look back and just say, well, it failed, but at least I gave it a go. But I thought you'd be a great partner. And when I approached you, I know you were pretty excited about it, but you also just had 2 twin baby girls. So maybe you can talk about, how it went on your end with that conversation. Cause I got to give a lot of credit to your wife, Kelsey, for kind of allowing this to happen too. But yeah, what made you want to dive in?
I remember having a day and waking up and having to go to work and being like, how long do I have to do this for? Like, how many more years? When is the end of this? And just that was not like a good thought to have in the back of my mind. So that was kind of one of those things. When you approached me, obviously I was very like scared of this idea, but my first initial thought is when you called me and we talked about this is that little voice was like, you should do this. And I had a feeling about it. And we chatted again, and I obviously had to go approach my wife and talk about it too, and slowly introduce this idea. And in terms of being like, I consider myself a pretty risk averse person, but my wife would be the most risk averse you can get, which is a good thing too. So it was just a lot of discussion about what are like the benefits of doing this, what are the risks of doing this, and I kind of thought like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out in a year, 2 years, 3 years, I at least feel like I can take the knowledge that I gained and that experience, and then I can go get a job somewhere and maybe get back to at least where I was, or maybe another step above. And at worst, like, sure, my 401k is not going to get a little bit more money in it, but that's okay. I can live with that. So I think just also hearing that apparently I've talked about being more entrepreneurial throughout the years, which I don't really remember, but other people have mentioned that. So I guess this was something that I secretly wanted to do, even though I was very, again, risk averse and not going to be the first person to jump in. Definitely not do it alone. So the fact that you came and approached me and kind of helped get me over that ledge a little bit is awesome, because now I'm sitting here going like, this is the best thing I've ever done. And I'm really glad that I took this chance. Even if it didn't work out, we're not where we are now, 100% would have still given it a shot and, enjoyed this experience.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride for sure. For everyone, the timeline here, we left our current roles in May of 2023 to launch January 1st of 2024. So I didn't have a income during that time. I cashed my 401k, and that's how I was living. So I will say there's definitely when you talk about risk and being risk averse, that's not something I ever really thought I would do, but it was just something that if we're going to do this, that was required. I was definitely having my moments where I was like, okay, what am I doing? But I am curious. I've never actually asked you, did you have any doubts in the process while we were waiting to try to find some funding and get this thing off the ground?
Oh yeah. I mean, we'll go through some of that, the funding process on another pod, but that was like, I mean, at one point, I was on unemployment too, and we're talking every day and we're building this thing, and we were diving into our different financial models and beating our heads against the wall and working on pitch decks and like just discovering who each other were and like building that relationship. But I also needed to put money on the table. I've got twin girls at home. We've got a mortgage, got, 2 cars, and like, my wife works full time in logistics too. But at some point, I jumped over to Bison, and I was doing Bison full time, and then, moonlighting with you. And I just remember thinking like, man, like we've been going through this funding process for a while now. We're just not getting anywhere. And so it's like, how do I see of us launching in January? Like, and this was like August when I started at Bison. And I just remember thinking that and having some doubts. So that was a little scary for sure.
I think that there's nothing more of an ego shot. Like, we've been in sales, right? So you make calls and someone's not interested, and you're kind of just like, damn, like another no. But when it's like you have the idea that's like your baby, and you really care about it, and you're like, man, I really I really believe in this. And you just hear the same conversation from different investors and different groups over and over again. It's like, we're not interested. It's not for us. Or like, come chat with us a little again when you guys have some revenue, or you're down the line. You made it a little further down the line. That was like some of the toughest rejection like I've ever had. Just like hearing it over and over again, thinking like, well, I don't have a safety net right now. I've made sure of that. So, are we going to be able to do this or not? That rejection is like it cuts a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking of it being kind of your baby, I do want to get into kind of how you came up with Hoplite, because you approached me with the idea. You already had the name and like the branding, the design done. So I want to just kind of hear and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Proud of that for sure. You look at a strong brand, strong name, and like I wanted something that kind of emitted that. And I knew like our company is likely not ever going to be like thousands of employees. That's not really the goal. It's like, you want to work smarter. You want to have a team of people who are working together and strong and do more with less, and like for that efficiency. And when I came across, I think I was looking up like different names for warriors or soldiers or something, just, kind of haphazardly, like looking for different names that I hadn't heard before. And like the first thing that came up I saw was Hoplite. I've never heard of that. We've had a bunch of people we've run into. They're like, oh, you guys are like Greek mythology fans or something. And like, I had no idea what Hoplite was before I Googled that. And when I started leaning into it a little more, for those who don't know what a hoplite is, it's basically the soldiers from the movie 300, where they have their shield and they have their spear, and they defeated much larger armies just because they fought for each other and they were smarter. And I just thought like the parallels between that and what we're trying to do just seemed awesome. And then obviously with the spear and the shield, like I thought, okay, there's some pretty cool branding that could be somehow involved with that. And I wanted it really simplistic in terms of what the logo looked like. So I mean, my goal was I wanted the logo to look like a sports team logo. You're wearing a hat. It's very simplistic. You're like, oh man, that's cool. And I think it all came together really nice, but that was kind of the thought process. And, we'll give credit to a lot of companies that are doing things similar in terms of their logo and marketing towards the end here. But like that time at Coyote was very like formative for me. And to see them, what they did with the marketing, like shout out Jody Navda, like that was just amazing. Like you had this very cool logo that I'd be wearing gear and people would be like, oh, like what team or brand is that? And it's like, well, that's our company. And I just don't know if you'd seen that in logistics before. And I wanted something similar. So the story itself, the logo, the branding, and then the colors were my high school football colors. I always wanted to do something with orange. So
you picked the right orange too. It's not like a Halloween black and orange. Like it's like a burnt orange, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it came out good, man. So, yeah,
I think when you have a strong message behind a name, like I'm all for people making up a new name and not having really any kind of like ethos behind it. But when you have something like Hoplite and the kind of warrior connotation behind it, I think it makes it easier for us to kind of build our pillars, especially as a brokerage. As a brokerage, you are grinding out there, nail and teeth. You've got carrier reps out there just having to really slay freight and book and work, tough hours, and sales reps too. Like it's not a glamorous lifestyle, so to speak, but with the concept of Hoplite and these warriors, I think you can kind of rally around that. And I think it helps support that brand. And then you can kind of build the pillars off of like who you want to be and what your culture is and kind of what your call to arms is for your employees. And so I think that's just kind of like a natural fit for what we do.
Yeah. Yep. I couldn't agree more. We get a lot of compliments about that. And even when we were walking around some of the conferences, people asking like who we are, I think that's how you built a strong brand, or at least the logo at the least. So, we don't have a marketing department. You're kind of looking at it. And for what I think we've done with limited time and resources, I'm proud of it for sure.
Well, thank God that you have a marketing background and I have a writing background, because your design capabilities on all of our marketing stuff is really good, and I definitely wouldn't be able to match that. So it's been really fun to watch you come up with a lot of this different stuff and do it quickly too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I think it's a good segue to the next thing here, which is just, I want to make sure everyone understands this is what this podcast is. It's not going to be a long one. Our episodes are going to be relatively short. Our goal here is to be 15 to 30 minutes talking about our process, where we're at, some of the things we went through as business owners and in logistics. And then we'll kind of move on to the next one. It's the goal here is that these are short snippets and easily digestible, that if you're, in the car, you can do it you can listen on a quick drive, and the episode's ending. Shout out to some of the other pods out there that are really in depth and strong stories, and they last a long time, but that's not really our goal yet. But if there's people are happy with it's going and they want the way it's going and they want more, then I think we can always expand. But I guess the last thing would just be, coming to you and kind of bringing this idea. How was it received from your wife? What were the things you went through before ultimately making the decision?
I think it was kind of like a slow process to get her more open to the idea, because if I was just like, yes, absolutely, I want to do this. But she, that's kind of me. I kind of am that way. I make a decision and I'm all in, but she got me to think about, like, everything going on in our lives right now with the kids. What are potentially the consequences of this if it doesn't go the way we thought it would go, but also, like, what does life look like if this goes really well? So that was a big part of it, and kind of us talking. I mean, you followed up with me weekly up until I kind of said, yeah, I want to do this, but I need to get my wife's sign off on it. So then you actually flew out to Minnesota and spent like a long weekend with us, and got to meet the kids, and got to get to know Kelsey quite a bit. And then me and you went out for some burgers. That was fun, and just talked and planned and talked about our future. But you kind of doing that move and coming out here and like spending the time was like really got her to say, okay, 100%, like, this guy's legit. Like, I see the good values in him, like learning about him, his background, where he comes from, Michigan, all the crossover that Brian and Rich have. She just saw that and said, like, no, I think this is like the right decision. I think you should do this kind of thing. So getting her blessing was huge. That was great for you to come out, and allowed us to really spend time getting to know each other, which is advice I would give any founder that is thinking about having a co-founder. Is if you know each other really well, that's great. If you don't, like, spend time getting to really know each other, not just your backgrounds, but also what kind of like personality you are, what kind of leadership style you have, what are you good at, what are you not good at, what do you think you're good at but you're actually not good at. We talked about that, and kind of some of those things emerged, and it's like, okay. And then kind of how you just doing exercises together about like how you can, I guess, learn from each other, and what your styles are going to be, and how you're going to complement each other as founders.
Yeah, that was actually one of the best advice that we got, I think, before I launched. It was, choose and this was from listening to a lot of other founder podcasts, where they said, if you're going to choose a business partner, it's just as important as choosing like a husband or wife, because you're going to hopefully be in the bunker together for a long time. And if you don't see eye to eye, you don't have the same values, or just it's bumpy from the get-go, you're in for not a very fun time. And then the way I looked at it too is I only had one shot at this. I didn't think if this didn't work out that I was going to be able to go do it again. So I did choose very selectively, and I couldn't have chosen a better co-founder, but yeah. So yeah, moving on to the next thing. I think one thing we want to do is kind of give some other companies that we either work with or have noticed or interact with some props, because the plunge was one thing, taking that dive and building the company. And just as a quick snapshot for everyone now, we're at 10 employees, and we have an office in Guadalajara, Mexico, with 4 employees down there, entity in Mexico. As we kind of said at the beginning, that's a big piece of what we're doing over time is cross-border Mexico. And so that's where we're at right now, 11 months in. It's been really exciting. A lot of growth this month, having a record month, which is cool. That's exciting. Well, even when that happens, there's a lot of challenges that come with it, but we will kind of discuss that on future episodes. But we want to give some companies some flowers for how they've done with their marketing. And we kind of have this thing every week where every episode where we'll both rank the top 3 of some type of category. And this category is going to be what we think are like the top marketed brands right now in the industry. Doesn't necessarily mean the biggest companies. Like you could throw out like FedEx because that logo was really, you really creative with the arrow in there. It's a company, not companies like that. Ones that we either work with or within the industry that we feel like are doing a great job with it. So I'll let you kick it off with your number 3, and we'll just kind of go back and forth until we get to the top 3, and then we'll throw out some honorable mentions of other companies we think are killing it in the marketing and logo game right now.
I like Arrive. I think their branding is like simple with the A. I think the connotation of like arrive, like the play on words, obviously works really well. I think they have like an internal mantra of what is it? It's like
Let's go, isn't it?
Yeah, LFG. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's kind of cool. It kind of reminds me of Coyote a little bit, and like building that energy. And we've met some Arrive guys have had former Arrive employees, and like that. I think they built a good culture, good brand. I think they market themselves really well. Their website's super clean. They're kind of everywhere right now. So I'd say that's my number 3. Number 2, Good Ship. I really love the branding itself and kind of just like the coloring around the letter G. And I think what Soskin's doing over there is super cool. I see their branding a lot. I see them, at all the conferences and events and stuff too. And I think they're just really solid. My number 1 would be Manifest. Awesome conference to go to in Vegas, but they've just done a fantastic job. I mean, all around. I mean, the way they market and they start after their event, like the week after, they already have a recap, and then they start, pushing out solid content. They push out, information about all the speakers that spoke, and they are consistent, like on LinkedIn and on socials, like throughout the entire year. I think what they've done over there, building up this conference and the way they market themselves is like phenomenal. And I love their branding. I love like what they stand for. I just think it's really solid. So
I can't disagree. I'm actually laughing because we don't have any overlap, which I was surprised. But Manifest, shout out. I had a fun experience there. We went back to Manifest after launching 30 days in, and I won tickets to the Super Bowl through them. So shout out Jay Weitraub and Courtney Mueller and Pam Simons. Killed it. That event was awesome, and I had the time of my life. So yeah, Manifest is a great choice.
Not biased at all for you.
Not biased at all, no. But you picked it, not me. No, they were on my honorable mentions just because they do a great job. I agree. I think that's probably the best conference in the industry right now. That was so much fun. So my number 3 is actually another like kind of competitor, but I want to give a shout out to Flock. I think what they're doing is really cool. The logo is I will say this, I actually liked the old logo more than the new one. But they've done some really cool things with marketing. I think they've put some good money into it too. The shared truckload is the way to differentiate. They're doing a great job with that. I think what they're doing with the environment, that aspect is really cool. The Blues Clues guy, if anyone hasn't seen those kind of like ads they did, was really cool and like unique in the industry. I got to give them a shout out for that. And just in general, it's really fresh and like kind of simplistic. So shout out to Flock. Number 2, the Green Screens. They are a partner of ours. Their marketing is great. Anytime you go to an event, they're usually the fun table where everyone's got their like Hawaiian shirts on and they're, setting up a bar or something, and their team is really fun. The product is great. I think that they have a consistent presence on all the platforms, and they're usually well represented at any conference you go to. So I think they just do a phenomenal job. So shout out to Green Screens, one of our favorite partners, great team, and give them a look if you're looking for a pricing platform as well. And my number 1 is Highway. Highway is just blowing up. They are our compliance platform. The product is awesome. They continually add new features. They've helped us navigate ways of avoiding fraud quite a bit. But like their marketing is just fantastic. I feel like just like green screens, they're kind of very well represented. The logo is clean, concise. Maybe I'm a little biased because of the H, but it's just very cool all around. I think that they're doing the best in the industry right now. I think they're growing for a reason, and it's part of that is the marketing too. But their platform's great. So shout out to our Highway friends as well. Did have some honorable mentions. Any that you had and wanted to mention?
I mean, shout out our boys at Rapido. They're everywhere. Probably should be top of the list too, because it's they're on the Freight Pod, they're on Freight Caviar. I mean, they've done a really good job marketing themselves in places where brokerages and other folks that would use their services are. I think their placement and advertising is fantastic. I love the color scheme they chose. All the content I've seen them share, even like their PDFs on their pricing structure, stuff like that, is just they do a really good job of placing their brand and kind of just marketing. Even something as small as like fonts are really important. And if you look at their fonts on their website or any material that they send you, it's all very the same and linear, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Love our friends at Rapido. I say Freight Caviar too. You mentioned them, but I just love their story in general, starting out with like teams and growing into a very legitimate platform and having like a shipper platform now, like just a fun team over there. And I think they're doing a great job. I had a couple. So Journey, obviously our buddy Will Jenkins is doing a great job. I think that the way they market, they're everywhere. They put out a lot of content, and I just really like the simplicity of the logo and everything. Great team over there. Shout out to them. Navix, Freight Audit and Automation. I love their rebranding with that logo. The purple really pops, and they got a fun team too. Really like the brand there. Our friends at Cargado, I think they're blowing up for a good reason. That was a sorely needed product, and really logo and the fonts and everything very clean.
Still haven't got my hat.
Yeah.
So Matt, come on.
Right on the hat. And the last one I'll just say is actually a company I'm not that familiar with, but I saw their logo scrolling LinkedIn and they caught my eye, and I was like, I think that's exactly what you're trying to do, right? When you create that, and that is Grizz Logistics. So shout out Grizz. I don't know a ton about what you do, but your logo was pretty cool. Doing a great job. Anyone else you want to give some props to?
No, I think that's good. I'm sure there's plenty of other names can't think of at the moment, but I mean, I think just having something that pops, catches the eye, that's clean. I think a lot goes into the actual branding, and I think it's really important. I mean, there's some stats about how people who are scrolling through and are picking products, how important it is for them to follow them on social media platforms. So the consumers typically are, but also just like the color scheme too, and catching that eye and being able to pull somebody in.
Yep, I agree. Simplicity is king. But well, that's it for the first episode. Like, look, I probably didn't come into this thinking you're going to be hearing about marketing and logos the whole time, but every episode will be a little bit different, talking on different aspects of growing a business how we've seen it anyways, and what our thought process was. Probably be a lot of disagreement with that, but that's great. That's the whole point of this is we're telling you kind of how we saw things and how we've done it, and whether that worked or just failed miserably. There's been plenty of that too so far. So, we will hopefully continue to keep this going. If you have suggestions for things you want to hear from, startup life and how that works, like please let us know. We're excited to do this and excited to continue to network more. I think that's been one of the funnest things about this whole thing is how many people we've either reconnected with or met in this journey, and similar people doing similar things and just betting on themselves. And that's really fun. So excited for the next episode, but
send your feedback. Constructive criticism is fine. We'll take it.
That's the first episode of the Ramp Up by Hoplite Logistics, and hopefully we see you in episode 2. Appreciate it.